threw down 2 days live stream, a little happy hour, a little dinner. We got an event planned Q4. Yes. Stay tuned. Yes. We're going into the events business. Robbie, Andy, the boys.
Yeah, shout out. 2 straight days, live stream straight from permissionless to Rollup TV. Coming for the #1 spot. Don't wait up.
See you around the timeline. Feels good to be back. Bing, bang, boom, pow. Crypto companies are going public. This is 2025. It's October 30th. And it's the start of a new era, the beginning of a new chapter. Some might say we are in a wormhole to a new reality, because back when we were trading dog coins on Bittrex, no one thought that this was possible. Only in our wildest dreams did we think this was possible. We have Trump and Xi shaking hands aggressively overseas. We have Jerome Powell cutting rates like his job depends on it. And we are unsure about the continuation of the bull market. This is the Rollup TV. This is Florida. This is Robbie Clages at your service. Guys, an incredible show today. We've got a couple of guys in the Solana stablecoin world. These guys are going to tell us about the evolving landscape of stablecoins, specifically on Solana. They've got a unique perspective on the Western Union stablecoin launch. We are going to ask them if Solana paid $25 million, $50 million, $1 bajillion in order for a few minutes of Western Union's exclusive stablecoin activity. And we are going to have a tremendous show, because just after Garrett and Stefan join us from Squads in the stablecoin Solana world, we are going to be joined by 𝘰𝘰 from 𝘗𝘪𝘴𝘬. If you guys are unfamiliar with 𝘰𝘰 and Theo, Theo is reimagining global markets because Theo is a full stack platform connecting on-chain capital to global financial markets. They work with the likes of Manifold, Selene Capital, Amber, tokenization infrastructure that goes beyond issuance. We saw what happened to the most recent tokenization platform. They went public on the stock exchange. And so we're going to talk to Theo about what is happening with all of these tokenization platforms, which ones are winning and why. Followed by none other than David of Hyperliquid Strategies. Hyperliquid is holding up the best in the market. Some might say Zcash. We had Josh Swihart of Zcash yesterday. The Rollup TV is the only place where Hyperliquid meets Zcash, meets meme coins. And that's not all for you guys. We are going to follow up David from Hype Strategies. We're going to have 𝘗𝘳𝘁 from Starknet. Very excited to speak with 𝘗𝘳𝘁. It's always a pleasure to have our Starknet friends on the show. And then we're going to close off by speaking with another digital asset treasury company, the 𝘱𝘭𝘢 Holdings Group, Stefan from 𝘱𝘭. Guys, we have an incredible show for you today. If you didn't tune into our show yesterday, you missed a mega stream. We live streamed the FOMC meeting. We spoke with PMT. We live predicted on call sheet Powell cut rates. He mentioned too many words that we didn't want him to mention: beige book, projection, median. We got absolutely smoked. And that's what happened yesterday. And now we are going to bring you guys another jam-packed day of action on today's show. Again, we're going to start off with our friends from Squads, and we're going to learn about the stablecoin world on Solana. Guys, we're going to be right back. We're going to flip the screen and we're going to get right into it. You guys are in store for a tremendous stream today. We'll be right back. All right. We are live. Stepan, Garrett, guys, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute pleasure to chat about the world of stablecoins with you guys. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we made it happen. Guys, you recently got some love from Anatoly. Personally, that's how I found out about you guys. Anatoly was shouting you guys out as part of the stablecoin world on Solana. The very following week, we saw Western Union announce that they're launching a stablecoin on Solana. And so that's part of what I wanted to talk to you guys about. Before we do, it's both of your first times on the show. I think that calls for a couple of intros. We'll keep it brief and concise, but who is Stepan? Who is Garrett? And generally, how did you guys end up here building Squads?
So I'm Stepan, I'm co-founder and CEO at Squads. About 4 years ago, I really got into Solana with my very best friend. We met our third co-founder and decided to build the most secure and resilient stablecoin infrastructure for the ecosystem, and been doing that for the last 4 years now.
And yeah, I'm Garrett. I do partnerships and comms at Squads. I was at Blockworks before this. I did Lightspeed, the Solana podcast with Mert from Helios. So I got him famous and I hired him. So that's why he is where he is today.
Wow. That is an epic Mert shout out. You literally built the guy from scratch. He couldn't have done it without you. Garrett, any just before we get into stablecoins, any comment on the most recent happenings at Blockworks, the transformation from a media company to a data company?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously from the outside looking in. I think it makes sense that they're focusing on data and research. They also killed at that. They have a really good team. I mean, they had an awesome news team. I was really close with a lot of those guys and girls. So it's sad to see that happen. I know they're going to end up in good places though. Blockworks has 2 killer founders. I think they're going to do really good. The most impressive thing for me with them is that over time that they've just been like kind of slow and steady. And you've seen a lot of news groups and different companies kind of fall off as you go through the cycles because sometimes they go too risk on, et cetera. And I think Blockworks has done it right and that they were bootstrapped and then they didn't raise money until about 4 years in. And I think it's playing out for them really well. So yeah, I mean, it's really sad to see everybody have to get laid off. But like I said, I think everyone's going to end up in a good place. And I've already seen a lot of Solana teams reach out. So if you're looking to get into comms or marketing on this end, there's going to be a lot of job openings.
Very cool. Yeah, it's funny to think about a news company or a media company going risk on, but I think that is what we see. We see teams get tribalistic. We see them go all in with some of their reporting and take leaps and bounds. And so us at the Rollup, we've been doing this for going on 6 years now. Started in DeFi summer 2020, and it's just legitimacy. We try to keep an educational framing to all of this and just help bring true factual knowledge. One, to help us, right, so that we can make good decisions as personal capital allocators, but then also everyone watching can also make good decisions as well now that they're well informed. Guys, again, thank you so much for coming on and for being here. I'd love to hear a little bit more about Squads, and then I do want to get into a sense of how you're seeing the stablecoin landscape playing out on Solana generally. So Stepan, maybe you can start. Tell us, what has it been like, your founder journey coming on, starting Squads, and then generally, why did you decide to build this protocol on Solana?
Yeah, so it basically is a journey of 4 years. Originally, we started focusing on governance infrastructure, and then pretty quickly figured out that we want to focus on multisig as the core component. And then somewhere along the way, we figured out that multisig is just one way to configure a smart account. And today, we're the biggest smart account infrastructure provider for Solana and SVM. And it was a very kind of natural progression together with the ecosystem. We, in the moment in time, we were what the ecosystem needed us to be the most. And when FTX happened, for example, multisig and self-custody for larger teams and valuable on-chain assets, particularly within the Solana ecosystem, became paramount. And so that also accelerated our growth in that moment in time. And as we have been growing together with our customers and sort of Solana teams and larger protocols, we saw them rely on stablecoins more and more, right? And use the multisig infrastructure to run payroll, to pay contributors, to essentially run their businesses entirely on chain with stablecoins. And so we also had to evolve together with them and bringing in more products and services that really allow you to go fully on chain with stablecoins as a business. And now we also have a consumer touch point with our Fuse wallet. And we also have now a developer product that makes it easy for other builders to come in and build similar financial applications on top of the infrastructure that we've been developing for the last couple of years.
And did you start relatively general and then you sort of dialed in, honed in on stablecoins as the primary driver of what you can use this infrastructure for? How did you start from kind of a general smart contract platform and then end up taking the leap and taking the dive into stablecoins? What was the rationale behind the decision-making process?
I think it's seeing how your customers actually interact with your product, right? And where they find most value. I think the way we think about like our business generally is there's the infrastructure layer, which is Squads protocol. It's really good at bringing in capital and assets into the ecosystem of Squads because it's very secure, it's very reliable, and it's now a very trusted sort of Lindy layer for securing assets within sort of the SVM world. And then we have this kind of second layer on top of the protocol, which is the productivity layer, right? Like it's apps and products and services that allow us to help make that capital productive, right? And so we saw that most of our customers were starting to rely on stablecoins as essentially the core infrastructure to run their business. And it became very clear to us that this is where things are going. And we actually kind of got that sense before there was this sort of stablecoin mania and everybody was talking about them, because we actually saw that happen on our platform, right? We saw our customers do that. And so that was really the main driver, is just like talking to our customers and talking to our users, right? And and figuring out that this is where the world is going, and then really kind of focusing heavily on bringing more stablecoin focused products that allow you to run your financial operations on chain to market. And so that was kind of the journey for the last year and a half.
Very cool. And this is certainly something that is continuing to accelerate. You guys saw it early, and now Western Union has announced that they're going to be launching a stablecoin. This was like the last holdout. This was like the last person that was like, you know, in their horse and buggy when the car came out. They were like, no, like, don't take away my horse and buggy. Cars are, you know, they're not going to work. Man, Western Union launching a stablecoin, and they decided to do it on Solana. There's rumors that, you know, Solana might have paid for some sort of exclusivity arrangement. Can I just get a general reaction to what it's like that now Western Union has said that they're going to launch a stablecoin and they're going to do it on Solana? What is your reaction to this news?
I think Solana has an amazing team, and they're working really hard to make the fintech world and the payments world outside of crypto aware of the amazing technology stack that's been built in the last 4-5 years, I think, at this point. And I think Western Union is just, it's a great milestone, right, for the team at Solana and for the ecosystem broadly. But job's not finished. There's so many companies that are just thinking about their stablecoin strategies, and there's so much ground to cover, and there's so many Western Union type caliber partners to acquire. And so I would say Western Union is fantastic. I think the rumors are incredibly silly. And I think, a large incumbent player recognizing Solana for its technology is actually very rational and makes a ton of sense. And I think we're going to see a lot more of those in the coming months and years.
Cool. Garrett, question for you. What is it like to acquire one of these stablecoin partners? Are you guys working with Western Union? If so, how were you able to land that? If not, what are some of the other stablecoins that you're targeting to ultimately acquire as part of the Squad's partner network?
Yeah, I mean, we want to be involved with as many stablecoins as possible. I'll say that. And kind of bouncing off what Stepan said, I think it's really great even from a brand awareness standpoint. I was just at Money 2020. A lot of the people there heard about the news and started asking around, and then you start hearing Solana more and more, whereas like the first 2 days or first day of the conference, you didn't hear that at all. So it's a big change there. I will say one thing that's unique about maybe the Solana ecosystem, and I think Squads in particular that really stood out to me when I got here, is that was, after FTX and everything happened, is that you have people here that continue to build and try to make great products no matter what's kind of happening on the outside partnership side. I think it is nice from a momentum standpoint and also brand awareness, but like we're used to here, we're just going to build great products, and no matter who comes on through partnerships, we know in the long run, if you build great products, everybody's going to come to you. So if you bring in the users, then the supply side, which to me are the stablecoin partners, they'll come. And that's our goal.
Got it. And so speaking, it seems like everyone and their mother's a stablecoin issuer these days, right? So speaking to kind of the group out there that is now getting into the game, issuing stablecoins, they're going and they're putting their foot into this business. It feels like every bank, every major institution, if they have some sort of financial capital at stake, they're going to be settling using stablecoins. JP Morgan just announced something in this regard today. What do you say to these guys? What is the conversation? Does it differ between enterprise and more crypto native? What is the elevator pitch for Squads, and why a stablecoin issuer should use Squads?
I think specifically on the issuer side, and as the pitch we've been making for the last 6 months, and we can't kind of talk publicly about a lot of these conversations and things in the pipeline, but there's a lot more things coming. We are pitching ourselves as a trusted partner to design your stablecoin strategy, right? And how you think about self-custody, key management, stablecoin accounts, how you want to make that stablecoin productive, right? Beyond just essentially using it for, shuffling capital around and sending it from one address to another, is yield a component of that? Like what kind of yield? And so we really come in as this partner that can give you the infrastructure, can give you the expertise, packaged also in the form of our enterprise and developer offering Grid, which is a set of simple APIs that unlock stablecoin accounts, card issuance, plug into orchestration, give you programmability and on-chain policies. And so we are really that partner that helps you design the stablecoin strategy. And we're obviously vertically integrated with Solana. We're single chain because we think this is how we can deliver the best experience to the customer, right? And so from that perspective, we are also very synergetic with the work being done at obviously by the Solana team, and so we work closely with them on sort of thinking through what is the right path for bringing in more fintechs and large institutions and asset issuers into the Solana ecosystem.
And like that makes sense, right? And Solana's philosophy has always been vertically integrated. Before it was like modular versus monolithic. Generally, we've seen more and more applications, platforms, L1s take this approach. Hyperliquid is going in this direction. It's this vertically integrated direction. And so we're seeing stablecoin issuers also go in this direction. We're seeing the rise of stable chains, Circle, Arc. We've got Tempo on the rise. Another acquisition was MasterCard that acquired or is supposedly acquiring Zero Hash, for the settlement of these transactions and specifically payments. So how do you see, given that you guys are focused on Solana, right? And there's a very vertically integrated approach there. Could you just unpack more about the rationale? Why does this give issuers a better experience than, say, launching their own stablechain?
I think maybe Garrett can also speak to, I think, the benefit of existing in internet capital markets, but it's the idea that it's a thriving, open, permissionless blockchain that has DeFi activity, that has internet capital markets activity, that has a lot of asset issuers coming in to do things on that chain. And so existing in this open environment, this is where you can actually reap the most benefits of an innovation mindset, right? And then innovations that come from the open system. And from a security and sort of reliability guarantees, we definitely believe that for like when you have a bunch of corporate chains that sort of interface with one another, that is actually not a viable foundation. Having a secure base layer that actually gives you security guarantees, performance guarantees, and has a massive community that hyper optimizes for performance and speed and security of the underlying blockchain is actually very important. And we think it's it's a massive benefit. And so when we are in those conversations with larger enterprises that are thinking about their stablecoin strategies, that's the argument we're always making. And so far it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, what I would add to that too is I think all these stablecoin issuers that are trying to more or less, I don't think there's going to be 1,000 of them, right? I think there's probably going to be a handful that really succeed at this payment use case. There's going to be so many stablecoins from the sense of like my platform. If I'm Starbucks, I might have stablecoin, Starbucks coin, But I think we're only going to have like USDC, USDT, and these other probably like 5 stablecoins. They're going to want to be everywhere. It's a services business. But if you're picking a home, the thing with Solana is that it's been around for the last like 5 years. We do have a lot of payment chains coming out. They have a lot of great features, but I would say at least 95% of that is covered by Solana today, and it's live in production. I think it's another thing with Squads is that we've been around since 2021, working in the stablecoin and infrastructure and security space. So if you want to go somewhere today that has a whole DeFi ecosystem built out, you have experienced builders, you have the infrastructure in place, that's where Solana is. So I think you make that your home. But I think it's kind of silly to think that a stablecoin is ever just going to be on one chain in perpetuity if you want to be an ultimate like payment stablecoin, because you want to be everywhere.
Right. We had 𝘗𝘯𝘵𝗪𝗓 come on the show, and he was describing this effect where think about Netflix. You can watch Netflix on your iPhone. You can watch Netflix on your laptop. You can watch it on your TV. You can watch it on an airplane. There's all these places. It becomes ubiquitous once you have the proliferation and the distribution of a stablecoin on all the chains. And so could you separate out maybe what, Garrett, when you say you may have Starbucks coin, but you may not have, you only may have like 4 or 5 payment coins. Could you kind of just separate those two threads?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it that like every big company that has customer demand is going to want to have their own coin, in some sense, own stable coin, and just the sense that they can make all the rewards, earn the yield on that. So it's more of like loyalty points at the end of the day, more or less. But I only think when you're talking about international payments and payments in between companies, payments in between banks, there's only going to be a handful of stablecoins that actually everyone's willing to accept and also has a really deep liquidity. And so at that point, you're not going to have 10,000 of those, the alphabet soup where there's so many different names of USDC or, USD token. So in my opinion, there's probably going to be like 3 to 5 of those. But I think anybody that has a lot of customer demand is going to have essentially a checking and a savings account where if you have customer funds sitting in your ecosystem, like even Stripe, it's easy, right? Like they have so many balances in their ecosystem, they're going to have a stable coin so that they can get those rewards and also share it with their customers. Whereas like if you're holding USDC, typically you're not earning anything on that. But for payments, those type of stable coins make sense.
Got it. And how can they leverage squads in this example, right? If there's a fragmentation problem, and we've got thousands of stable coins in there, and Starbucks has a stable coin, and USDC exists, and Chick-fil-A coin, and all these different things. Even given that they're more of loyalty programs, we're going to need to clear between these stable coins somehow, right? How can they use squads to help accomplish and maybe fix some of this fragmentation issue?
Yeah, it's a good question. Chick-fil-A coin made me laugh, by the way. Steph, I can let you take this, but I'll just give my like kind of high level thoughts. I mean, I think a lot of this is a liquidity issue, right? If you're going in and out of your own stable coin to one that you make payments with, that's a liquidity issue. That's not something that we naturally focus on, but what we do provide is the infrastructure that allows you to do this money movement in a secure way. So that's kind of like the high level that I'll provide. And Steph, I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I think we're not solving interoperability, right? Like we're solving secure, reliable infrastructure that allows you to deploy stablecoin accounts for your own enterprise, for your customers, for basically for the whole ecosystem, right? And design a stablecoin strategy around money movement and stablecoin accounts. And so I think from our perspective, obviously, we think that interoperability, particularly in the stablecoin space, is going to happen, and there's going to be multiple chains, right? We're not thinking that Solana is going to be the only chain to exist. And I think the way we think about our infrastructure is that it gives you, it allows you to maximize benefits that Solana can give you from a performance and reliability perspective. And then obviously, if you want to have your assets, on multiple chains, then you're going to have to match the same functionality. But I think that's from like the infrastructure perspective. From a product perspective, our focus is very much on bringing in net new inflows into the stablecoin space, right? Like we're not kind of thinking about how can we get supply, like stablecoin supply from chain X to Solana, or the other way around. It's very much how can we grow the stablecoin supply, right? How can we create net new stablecoin supply that comes in through different entry points that we create with our products and allow to get the efficiency gains of using stablecoins over fiat money.
Yeah, and I'd add that, like, it's hard if you're a company coming in this space and you're trying to say, would we put our customer deposits into stablecoins if you can't trust it and think it's secure and it's easy to manage? And those are basically all three things that we were trying to do constantly. And we started that with crypto teams, and now we're bringing that out to the traditional finance world.
Right. So help me rationalize this then. There's 300 billion of stablecoins now. I think we all have heard, Secretary Bessent and the projections at how much, this could be in scale 3.7 trillion by 2027, 2028. And so if we're not too focused on, trying to take the stablecoins from other chains, that's where, predominantly most of the stablecoins are today, right? We've got, I'm looking at DeFi Llama here, 160 billion on ETH, 78 billion on Tron, 15 billion on Solana. So Solana is number 3, but it's still 10x away from the scale of stablecoins on Ethereum. And so are you guys primarily focused on trying to win some of these stablecoin deals like Western Union? When these guys come online, they're going to be using Solana. They haven't gone and deployed somewhere else first, or is in an effort to grow the supply of stablecoins on Solana, it still makes sense to try to sort of siphon off or vampire attack some of the stable coins from other chains, or is that not the right way to think about it?
I think Altitude, our business account, is a good example, right? So we announced just a month ago public launch of Altitude, which is essentially gives you a business banking experience, but purely on stablecoins. There's sort of no crypto knowledge required. It's all any kind of CFO or an operational person in a traditional startup would be able to fully navigate it and use it as if it's their sort of traditional bank account, but it's fully powered by stablecoins and Squad's infrastructure. And I think that's a good example where it's much less interesting for us to go and say, well, how can we get more of the stablecoin supply from Ethereum, rather than looking at a massive market and saying, can we allow 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 businesses to start essentially banking on stablecoin rails using our products and our infrastructure and growing stablecoin supply on Solana that way, as opposed to trying to figure out like how can we do these kind of zero-sum games, because we think that it's a massive opportunity that somebody should do this, and it's much more just engaging for us, and we think a long-term much better strategy to come in and into a market that doesn't have stablecoin solutions at all, and help businesses manage their financial operations much more efficiently using this new technology, as opposed to trying to go out there and move some supply from Tron or Ethereum.
And so in that regard, when you guys are having conversations with enterprises and they're looking at entering the stablecoin space, you guys come and you're like, hey, we can provide you the accounts, we can provide you the infrastructure to facilitate these stablecoin transactions. are the enterprises asking you or concerned at all about what chain they're being deployed on, or are they not really that deep in the weeds? Like how involved are the enterprises? Where do they end up in the stack, or do they just kind of trust you guys to handle a lot of the infrastructure?
I think it really depends on the use case, right? Because like one of the most popular use cases we're seeing and we're discussing right now with a few customers is where you're a platform that you have capital coming in, and then you have to disburse it to either consumers. So it's like a payout platform for contractors or payroll. There's plenty of those where there's a lot of demand with those businesses to essentially verticalize like a consumer neobank within their own platform, right? So they can have float stay in the system, and so you have assets coming in, and then you're able to disperse them using stablecoins, so stablecoin wallets of essentially end recipients. And then you, as a platform that does the payouts, fully control that flow end to end. So from that perspective, you're really agnostic to the chain itself. Like you're not, you don't have alignment to Ethereum or Tron or Solana. All you care about is, can I deploy, 1 million or 2 million accounts for a reasonable price? Will this whole infrastructure be secure? Will it be self-custodial? In some cases, like that's starting to come up, where if you want to scale your enterprise to markets where you can't get licenses, or you essentially want to arbitrage the fact that self-custody allows your users to have wallets and essentially control their own keys. So you care much more about those questions, much less about what chain you're building on. As long as the chain kind of passes the threshold of being sufficiently decentralized, being performant, being secure, and giving you sort of the cost and efficiency guarantees that you require as a large enterprise making those choices. So yeah, but I think that's much more important than kind of thinking about interop and different chains.
Cool, makes sense. I mean, it certainly worked out for you guys. You got 15 billion in stablecoins that you're helping to secure. Could you describe what the makeup of that 15 billion is? Maybe just some metrics if you know any off the top of your head. Generally, I'm just curious how much stablecoins, like what is the split, maybe enterprise to retail? Is it all USDC or USDT? Is there sort of a makeup demographic that way? Geographical regions, generally, where do you find the 15 billion coming from?
So just to clarify, 15 billion is total assets secured. So that includes assets other than stablecoins. Stablecoins is 2 billion and 100 million. And so that is made up mostly of USDC. So 1.3 billion is USDC. And then the rest is split across USDT, PyUSD. That includes BUIDL and some other stablecoins that are coming to Solana. I would say 90% of that is enterprises, and then 10% of that is retail. Geography-wise, it's I would say 50% kind of US or around US, so like the offshore ecosystem around US as well. So that includes BVI, Panama, and essentially where a lot of the foundations reside. And then the rest is sort of split across. We're starting to get more demand from Latin America, but then it's obviously Europe and parts of Asia. That is pretty evenly split in the remaining 50%.
Very cool. You guys also have a partnership with Coinbase, all right? So you're kind of like putting your tentacles out into some of these other ecosystems. How has this partnership, it's been live for maybe 2 months or so, but you guys have, like you said, garnered over $1 billion of USDC, and there's very tight relations between Circle and Coinbase. So how has this partnership helped, or how do you think it will help in the future to continue the growth?
Yeah, so we're really happy to be partners with Coinbase. It's been a few months already, and we have a couple of features coming up that make it much clearer what this partnership is actually about. It spans, like, for example, we also heavily use EuroC, right, which powers the Euro accounts in Altitude and gives you this full multi-currency experience at this point, where you have a dollar account powered by USDC, you have a Euro account powered by EuroC. There's a lot of DeFi things that are coming up and integrations that will allow you to earn yield, and it will feel very much intuitive to any kind of traditional audience without really thinking too much about interacting with the blockchain. And there's also some things that we're excited around CBBTC, which we think is sort of the best version of Bitcoin out there on Solana today. And we have a few specifically Bitcoin or CBBTC focused features coming up in the next few weeks. But I think from our perspective, we obviously are stablecoin maxi, and we would love to have more stablecoins out there. But at the same time, we also see that majority of our customers do prefer to use USDC for payments, like Garrett was mentioning. And I think there's kind of a lot of there's kind of separation in customers' minds, where there's a payment stablecoin, there's a stablecoin that I use to earn yield. And I think that also is important from a perspective of like, if these are real businesses, like accounting matters, and having a single stablecoin that's both used for payments and storing your essentially cash balance and also being your investment account or like your earn account doesn't always work for reporting requirements. And so actually majority of the like accountants we talk to and CFOs, they would actually prefer that those are two separate accounts and not a single checking savings account in one place. And so, yeah, I think so far we've been incredibly happy working with Coinbase. And actually, the partnership with Coinbase doesn't entail any kind of multi-chain aspect to it, right? It's like Coinbase is very active in the Solana ecosystem, and we kind of love to see them supporting DeFi in different ways, and as I mentioned with CBBTC as well.
Very cool. Guys, man, this has been an absolute pleasure. I don't have a ton more. I mean, generally, I think my final question here is, 15 billion and total assets secured. How do we get this to 100? How do we get to trillions? Everyone's saying trillions. Let's get.
I'm gonna give my quick viewpoint on this. So we actually all get paid in USDC and stablecoins at Squads, and we have like the whole time when I joined the company, and actually like, even though I was working in crypto before this, like never got paid in USDC, right? So it's funny, I'm talking to people at foundations and different companies, and they don't get paid in stablecoins, yet they talk about it every day. So one, I would say that Squads is actually solving our own problems, and that we actually like run payroll through stablecoins. And now we actually have a business account so other people can do things like that. So we had a problem, we were doing it in the tough way. Now we actually solved our own problem. We're trying to expand that for others. But one thing I noticed is I got paid in stablecoins. Initially, I was just off-ramping that to my traditional bank account because that's where my debit, my credit card is, where all my bills are. But over time, I started seeing that I could earn like 4 or 5% yield. And you start seeing those like payments come in each month. You're like, okay, this is kind of nice. Like maybe I'll let this balance grow a little bit. Then I'm somebody that likes to trade on-chain assets. So if I already have it in USDC, it makes it super easy to do that trading, right? So if you're somebody that doesn't do trading at all, I get it. Maybe you don't really care to get paid in USDC, but for me, it's perfect. Now with like our debit card, you can spend anywhere. And those cards are only get better over time. Like right now in the US, they don't have points, or most cards don't have points. If they do, it's like a token that might go to zero. We don't have points, for example, but we will. And so will other people. And then you have another reason to use your stable coins to spend. I think the more that you have to do on chain, which is like one reason why I think Solana is so great, is sure you have stable coins, but you also have like internet capital markets in the sense that you can lend, borrow, trade. And every time that like stocks come on chain, then it's available to everyone, right? Like you can go to Fuse, our consumer app, and the day that some project launched stocks, you could start doing that on Fuse. The more that gets built out, the more reason you have to actually stay in those stable coins once you get paid in it. And that to me, just over time, I mean, maybe there will be a step change moment where everyone goes into stable coins, but I think it's once you start to see the benefits of it over time, just like I kind of have getting paid in it, slowly my balance has only gone up over time. I used to off-ramp all of it, and now I keep at least 50, 70% on chain. So I think it's less of a step function change unless there's some COVID type event that kind of, QR codes came out of nowhere all of a sudden. That could happen in the stablecoin space as well. But I think stable coins with banks and tokenized deposits, that could be part of it. But I think otherwise, it's just really building really good products. And that's what we're trying to do at Squads. Because once you have the product and you're using it, you may not even care the stable coins are underneath it. But then you start seeing some benefits of it, and your balance is just going to grow over time.
Incredible. Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And you describe the incremental changes these ultimately add up and compound. Once people do start to see that 4 or 5%, that's a lot more than the 0.04 or 5% that they get on their savings account now. It's funny, just quick story. I was sitting in a room. It was at some crypto conference. There was maybe 50 of us. It was like this brunch event. And there was a payment company that was like, hey, who here? We all work at crypto company, but who gets paid in stable coins? Our company also pays our employees in stable coins. I was the only one out of like 50 people there that raised my hand. And then I had to explain how we did it. And it was, back then it was like safe. And I think we used request finance and we did all these things. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, one by one, all of these companies are going to get onboarded. Those are little step functions in and of themselves, but over time, ultimately, these do really grow and they do add to the stablecoin balance. Look, 3.7 trillion by 2 years from now. This is all incremental, but it's going to be a lot of step changes that get us there, guys. Thank you so much, 𝘗𝘂. I'll give you the last word. Anything to add after Garrett's rant and my story?
Thanks for having us. If you're a business, go sign up to Altitude. We would love to show you what it means to bank on Solana and use stablecoins to run your financial operations. If you're an individual, Fuse Wallet is waiting for you. It's one click away. And we're always around if you have any feedback or if you want to learn more about stablecoins or how you can use them in real life. Ping Garrett or me in DMs.
Love it. Thank you so much, guys. Absolute pleasure having you guys on. See you soon.
And thanks, babe. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Beautiful. Yeah, we're going to go stand by here for a minute, and then we're going to keep the show rolling, guys. Banger episode today. Another great conversation about stablecoins on Stabled Up, presented by Frax. Frax is one of the leading stablecoins on the market, and man, we talk about trillions. Frax is going to get there. They're going to help lead the charge. They're one of the issuing companies, and they, along with Squads, are helping to power the stablecoin super cycle. Guys, we will be right back with our next guest, Iggy from Theo. right, there we are, Mr. Iggy from Theo. Welcome to the show, Chief Investment Officer at Theo. Iggy, welcome to the show, brother. We were just talking a little bit behind the stage about your time in Miami.
Thank you so much. Yes, so people think it was fun, but I was actually speaking at I don't know if I should say it boring because I don't want to like offend anybody, but at a very traditional TradFi conference called ABS, asset-backed securitization, which deals with, when you take things that are not securities, like student loans and car loans and mortgages, and then you bundle them into securities, right? So oftentimes in crypto, we try to take securities and then tokenize them, make something else out of them. In this case, it's almost the opposite. So it was a massive conference, 7,000 people, and there was one event focused on crypto and one event focused on AI. So I was talking to them about crypto, really explaining the basics, like why it's better to do things on blockchain than with mainframes and COBOL code that was written in the 1950s.
Yeah, when you say it like that, it's really a no-brainer. 1950s code, we've come a long way since then. So what are some of the roadblocks that we still have to face as an industry? Is it really like we try to do an educational job here at the Rollup, talking to you, try to bridge the gap between institutions, enterprises, and more crypto native people so that hopefully both sides become more educated. What would you say are some of the obstacles? Is it really a knowledge gap that still exists to bringing more capital on chain, or is there technical hurdles that we have to overcome?
I think the technical hurdles have gotten largely overcome. So before joining Theo, I was global co-head of Polygon Ventures. So we've, over time, and even before I joined, invested in many of these solutions. So they kind of, what we do, like the tokenization of real world assets, in our case, it's financial assets, but it could be other assets too. And, people talked about it since there were papers from World Bank and IMF and other big global banks, private banks, since 2015-16 that I was reading about how you need to rewire the global financial system on blockchain rails. And that is still valid. Mm-hmm. But at the time, you didn't have the smart contracts were just starting. So you didn't have fast blockchains. You didn't have the entire infrastructure, oracles. I mean, just everything that's built out now was not in place. You didn't have crypto teams at these global institutions. So there was somebody who would write the paper and then move on to stuff. It was kind of an innovation teams at best. Now, 2/3 of like $1 trillion global institutions, because we talked to all of them, they have crypto teams. They've been in place for several years, and they've acquired political capital internally, right? So they have the ear of the board and of the CEO, and then these people have sort of found their footing, and these are like the main. Obviously, like the thing that everybody mentions is the regulatory and legal environment in the U.S. has done a full 180 in recent times. So there's still a lot of legislation to pass. Like all we had is stablecoin bill that basically prohibited stablecoins from giving yield to people, which is kind of interesting. But there's still a lot to pass. But the zeitgeist and the fact that the lawsuits are getting dropped is completely different. Like I used to advise my portfolio companies for all the founders to be outside the U.S. for 6 months out of a year. Now we're advising them get back in as soon as you can. And you see a lot of projects actually getting physical office space, oftentimes in New York, where we're based, just to like really emphasize that pivot. So I've traveled to many different countries in the last few months, and the rest of the world is following U.S. lead. So there were a few jurisdictions that were always friendly-ish to crypto, like you got some in the Middle East, Singapore and stuff. But now other countries that were kind of along with the U.S. On that, they're also pivoting hard because they have to stay competitive with the U.S. because U.S. already has a lot of the crypto talent and the founders, and the vast majority of the venture capital in VC is U.S. based. So if the other countries don't mirror our policies, then they will completely lose the lead on crypto. So the whole world is becoming more friendly.
Yeah, it's incredible to see how far we've come. Gary Gensler set the space back so far. and pushed all, like you said, there was a brain drain. The intellectual capital all fled the US. Like you said, you instructed your portfolio companies to leave the United States, spend 6 months out of the year outside of the country. Now you're telling them to come back as soon as they can to ultimately build the connections that they can to facilitate more of this business, because now that business is happening inside of the US. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit more about Theo. Tell us, what are you guys focused on? You're mentioning tokenization and RWAs. Now, with all of this intellectual capital and all of this real capital, this financial capital that is coalescing in the US, how are you leveraging your position in the US to ultimately grow and continue to bring these things on chain?
Yeah, so just real quick, as a VC, I got to start with the framework. There were, in my view, the three phases to RWAs, right? So we're in the RWA space, real world assets. I hate this word, but that's what the industry calls it. In TradFi, RWAs is actually risk-weighted assets, but we'll leave that one. So there were kind of a three main phases. First is you take some weird thing like a building in Miami or dinosaur bones or some portfolio of invoices that you have no idea who is behind them, and you put that on chain. And basically stuff that nobody else wants. So it's adverse selection, as we call it. And no wonder nobody bought it. Second phase was when the global institutions came in. That's when you had the KKR with Avalanche and Polygon with Hamilton Lane and others stepping in and doing this first tokenization deal. That was a radical shift because suddenly you had really high quality assets, private equity funds, private credit funds, T-bills, and this was the global institution. So this was what paved the way for phase three, because the problem with phase two is it was great to get this blue chip brand names involved, but what they're doing is they're tokenizing stuff and then nothing happens after. So you put things on blockchain, you put these high quality assets, but then they're not composable, they don't connect with DeFi, they don't trade, nothing really happens. Oftentimes you could barely trade it with a whitelist, and it have to be at the minimum accredited investors, oftentimes QPs, qualified purchasers, or even QIBs, qualified institutional buyers in some cases. Some of them huge minimums, like a $5 million minimum in order to mint redeem. So basically they were on blockchain, but that's what we call tokenization theater, is when you sort of tokenize, you announce TVL, you issue a press release, but then nothing happens after that and everybody sort of forgets about it. So where Theo comes in is to go beyond issuance. So we pick up where, we kind of, as Isaac Newton said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. The trillion-dollar institutions that tokenize things paved the way. Now, where we come in is we're 100% focused on getting them to trade, connecting them to the on-chain world, taking them to a place where liquidity lives, and making them composable with DeFi, with this wonderful world of DeFi and the money Legos, where it's permissionless and you can do anything you want, and making it accessible all around the world with no minimums, no unnecessary paperwork, and making it super easy.
Yeah, there's components to these infrastructure pieces, right? We've got this global financial system that is currently really spread out and it's very complex and it all lives off chain. And now we're sort of taking piece by piece and putting it on chain. We start with stable coins as sort of the most basic fundamental building block. Then we have RWAs. I agree. I don't like the name as much. We have risk rated products and, bundles of securities. We have CLOs. We have all of these financial structured products that are available now on chain. We're moving those on piece by piece. And so at a certain point, we're going to have more on-chain capital and these two worlds will start to balance out. And what I'm hearing from also some traditional capital allocators is that it's becoming a risk to not be on chain. I'll repeat that. It's becoming a risk to not be on chain, meaning that before, when you speak to these people at ABS, they're really looking at blockchain as a risk to their capital. If I put even, if I have a few billion in assets under management, even 1% or 2% of capital on these chains poses a significant risk to the capital base. And so they chose not to go on chain. But now with the liquidity, with the network effects that are on chain via all this tokenization, it's becoming more of a risk to not be on chain. what would you say to someone who, is maybe starting to dip their toes in the water? Maybe they have, 1%, 2%. Someone like, take a Janus Henderson, for example, right? They've got 400 billion, I believe, in assets under management, maybe more, but they've started to just take 1% or 2% and put it on chain. Now they have a CLO product, AAA, and it's $400 million tokenized on chain. Biddle from BlackRock is another one, right? Massive capital base. Small percentage of their capital lives on these tokenized products, but it still represents, hundreds of millions of dollars. What do you think is the catalyst to bring a higher percentage of the capital base on chain? Not just 1 to 2% of BlackRock or Janus Henderson, but 5, 10, 15, 20%.
Yeah, so I do think it's to make those assets useful on chain, right? So part of the reason it doesn't grow, because people look at what happened with this phase 2 type RWAs. It's like, well, it sits on chain, but we can't do anything. We still have to go through all the usual Web 2 and TradFi type processes in order to access these products, for them to change hands. And of course, you can't do DeFi. So people will use something that is useful, right? That has utility. So adding utility to those tokens, that's going to increase the demand. And the first step is trading volume. So for example, with us, we were 150 million of TVL. I just launched a couple of months ago. And this is only our 10th product, which is the T-bill fund, which we did in partnership with Wellington and Standard Chartered. Both of these are 100-year-old plus institutions, probably way more than 100, but very, very big and very, very, very traditional. So this is, this is the risk-free rate. So it's not a particularly exciting thing, and yet we were able to get it to trade $8 to $15 million a day, on some days 30 to 40 million a day. So in terms of velocity, which is the trading volume divided by TVL, we are probably one of the highest, if not the highest, RWA, and velocity is growing. So we're going to be launching other things, tokenized gold, tokenized equities. Obviously, those things inherently have a much higher demand for trading and volume. So with that, and also our TVL, we have a kind of a visibility into a few hundred million already of additional TVL that will be slowly coming into Theo. So we're on track to be the #1 RWA project by trading volume. And that's really our North Star, because once you have trading, you have accurate price discovery. And then from there, you can do DeFi, right? You can so why do we tokenize things? So you can use it as collateral on chain, you can lend it out, you can fractionalize it, you can have perps on it, which is something I hope we'll get into. It's really the most exciting part.
We've only got a couple minutes left, but I do want to hit on this most exciting part, like you're saying. And so part of what you're saying is, as we bring more on, there's more revenue, there's more potential for yield as a result of bringing these on chain. Can you just wrap up by describing what you see as the most exciting part of the tokenization movement?
Yeah, I think the most exciting part is to take assets that already have a lot of liquidity in the TradFi world, and then bring them on chain, because that's something that's working already. So, for example, we're excited about tokenized gold. It's in the final stages. And in fact, our tokenized gold is going to have yield, which is the first of its kind. So a lot of the time you actually don't know it, but even with TradFi gold product, there's a lot of slippage, and obviously there are explicit asset management costs. So there is a hidden and explicit cost that you pay, even in the US, in order to own gold. And if you go outside the US, you need to have really high minimum in order to get gold efficiently. So putting gold on chain, making it low cost, no minimum, is extremely efficient. And then, of course, once you have perps, so the thing that we're most excited is perpetual swaps on chain. So right now, RWA and perps are surging. There is a lot of new perp dexes that started. So it's not just, we're very aligned with Hyperliquid community, but there is many others. And they're all competing, which is great for the industry. The volumes are growing. And so we will, first of all, connect our RWAs to the perp world. We'll spin up those markets, make market for them, provide the capital, and that's what drives the liquidity. And once you have liquidity, that's the sea change that's going to take it, like you said, from 1% to 10% of the AUM for the big institutions.
Beautiful. It's funny you mentioned Hyperliquid. We've got David the CEO of Hyperliquid Strategies, coming on right after you. So he will be up here. He will be up here next.
We're huge fans of Hyperliquid. We're very big in the community. In fact, we're going to be launching our own HIP3 exchange, specifically focused on RWAs, to have perps on RWAs, and then also enable no insult to Hyperliquid, but enable other perp dexes to trade RWAs using our technology.
Awesome. Well, congrats on all the success so far, Iggy. Thank you so much. You've really been, a game changer in tokenization. It's good to hear that you're going to be launching a HIP3 market. We're going to be talking a lot more about Hyperliquid here coming right up. Thanks, Iggy.
Great. Thanks a lot.
All right. And without further ado, I hope our editor is ready in the back, because we've got David in the room as well. He's going to be joining us on stage now. Whenever he's ready, let's bring him up, because David 𝘗𝘂𝘕 from Hyperliquid Strategies is going to be our next guest. And I'm very excited to chat about all the things that are going on at Hyperliquid. We've been big Hyperliquid bulls. I think we bought on day 1 or 2. So I'm really excited to have David on the show. David, welcome.
Thanks. How you doing?
Doing well. It's a pleasure to have you. Like I was just saying, we've been big fans of Hyperliquid for a long time, since it launched, and as are you. You guys are the Hyperliquid strategy, which is a publicly traded vehicle for Hype, and there's really exciting things happening on Hyperliquid. We just heard Iggy, who is the CIO at Theo, their massive tokenization protocol, is going to be launching a perpetuals market using HIP3. So tons of exciting things. David, maybe that's a good place to start, because there's so many things happening. Can you just pick out what is your most exciting thing that's happening on Hyperliquid now?
Well, the most exciting thing for me, of course, is that our deal is going to close in November. We set a shareholder vote date for November 18th. We're going to close right after. So I can't help but be biased and say that's the most interesting thing for the moment for me. More generally, I actually think the most interesting thing going on with Hyperliquid now, also, I'm biased, but is kind of the most interesting thing going on in crypto in general, which is HIP3 and these real world assets actually coming on. And I've been saying this for a while now, but now we're actually seeing it. People for a long time have been saying, real world assets are going to go on chain. And I think a lot of people say that without actually knowing what that really means. Like, what does that actually mean? Are you trading spot? Are you going to change ownership? Like how does that actually work? Is someone just going to hold a bunch of custody of assets? And here now it's actually happening, right? Like literally today, you can go and trade the NASDAQ 100 on a HIP3 market, with trade XYZ.
Yep.
I think over the next few days, I don't know when, but soon, I think they're rolling out like Tesla and NVIDIA. And you can actually go do that with real money, with real counterparties, with real volume, and real liquidity right now. And I think that's like I am certain, there are other examples of real assets on chain and actually working, but I don't think it's really happened to scale yet. And I don't think it's doing what people have been hoping for, and now it's actually happening.
Yeah, and those products that you're talking about, they're not accessible or really familiar to retail and a mass audience, right? These are CLOs, right. These are structured products that are yielding some percent, and they're providing real yield, and that's great. But when it comes to what people are familiar with, what they want to trade, it's happening on Hyperliquid, and it's happening in the form of tokenized stocks, and this is complementing the portfolio of assets that are available on Hyperliquid. Before we dig more into that, I want to talk about the deal that is closing in November. You guys filed the S1 to raise up to $1 billion. And I'm just curious, can you walk us through what that means?
Let me be precise,
please.
Because the S1 is super important, but the money we've raised already is much more important. So over the summer, I think it was July 14th, we announced that we've raised $888 million. In a combination of both tokens and cash. I think it was about 65-35 in favor of tokens, approximately.
That was Hype that was deposited?
Hype tokens.
Yeah.
Hype tokens. We've raised that money to create, what is going to be by far the largest Hype DAT out there. The interesting thing, the different thing about our deal versus most deals people have seen out there is because of the majority of the money coming in, or the capital coming in, is coming in a hype token. And because a lot of those token holders care about taxes, I know I care about taxes, we've structured the deal in a way where when the investor gives us a hype token and we give them cash back, that transaction is not currently taxable. So the tax is deferred. They don't get away with the taxes, but when they sell their shares one day, that's when they would pay the tax. And their basis transfers over. And that's important to a lot of people, especially the people that want to hold for a long time because they don't want to be hit with the tax today. In order to achieve that tax outcome, we had to structure the deal where you actually have a signing and then a closing much longer after. And in between, you have to get a shareholder vote. So once you start talking about shareholder votes of the existing company we're investing in, you got to do an S4 with the SEC. It's got to go effective. You got to mail out the proxy materials to the investors, and you actually have to have the vote. So that turned out to be a 4-month process.
Okay.
I had black hair when this whole thing started. But here we are. So that's happening next month, and it was really tax driven. So that's the $888 million we will have on November 19th. The S1 you're referring to is to raise additional capital after we close. And that'll be done sort of ATM-like capital raises, if and when we think the market is worth doing.
Got it. So you've already done the paperwork. You filed the S1 so that when it makes sense to do so, you guys can do these ATM raises to raise more capital and use that to facilitate the hype strategy. But to be clear, let me just be really, let me interrupt, but be really clear.
Sure. Day one, we have $888 million of capital coming in. Of that, about $300 million, a little less, I think, is cash that we will be using to buy more hype once we close.
Got it. And so the way that a lot of these digital asset treasury companies work is they'll have sort of a reserve of cash. And so you've got a little less than 300 million that is coming in. How much of that 300 million are you still yet to be deposited and used to be buying hype?
So we haven't used that penny of that yet, right? Because again, that hasn't come in yet.
Right. But how much of it? Can you speak to how much you will be depositing versus how much you'll be holding in cash reserves?
We will likely use what I'd call the vast majority of that money to buy hype in the near future.
Understood.
We will keep, 2 years, give or take, of cash available, 2 years of operating expenses of cash available, just so we can be very comfortable with, knowing, we're not going to have any short-term cash needs. But generally speaking, we're going to put all our money into the hype.
Got it. Okay, so that's a little bit less, but the vast majority of about 300 million going into hype. And so the counterfactual to this is the hype that you have coming in kind. It's hype tokens. These guys don't have to pay. You talked about the tax situation, and so this hype coming in. There's also a capital deployment strategy with respect to this hype. Hype, you can stake it, you can deploy it, you can do all these things with it. What is the strategy to deploy the hype that you have coming in? You mentioned 65% of about 888 million. Okay. 65% of that. So that's about 500, maybe 600 million or so, maybe a little bit less.
Yeah, it's 500 something, within, a short period of time after we close, we'll have 800 something million of hype, give or take. So the short answer is day one, we plan on staking, 100% of that hype. I think over time, and when I say time, I'm referring here to what I'd call traditional finance time, not crypto time. In crypto time, when someone says long term, they mean like a week and a half. That Friday thing that happened 3 weeks ago. Feels like it was about 1,000 years ago.
That's right.
But it was 3 weeks ago, less than 3 weeks ago. It was 20 days ago. Over time, we will be considering thoughtful ways to where we can think we can earn better than the staking yield on some or all of that. But we're going to do it in a pretty deliberate way. The underlying hype token already has plenty of volatility. It's not like I'm sitting here saying this isn't volatile enough for me. So if we think we can earn, what I'd say, an extra unit of yield for less than an extra unit of risk, or however you want to think about risk versus return, we will take that really seriously. But we're not going to be rushed to do that in a day or a week or even a month and anything more than what I consider to be pretty conservative staking.
Right. Yeah. Pretty vanilla staking. And so when you're thinking about risk, will you be deploying your own Hyperliquid validators, or will you utilize the existing validator network?
Yeah, day one, we'll be using the existing validator network. We will definitely consider over time having our own validator. I think it makes a lot of sense for a whole bunch of reasons. But again, that's not, we have probably dedicated 90% of our focus since we announced to just getting this thing closed.
Yeah.
And, once we're closed, we'll have a lot more capacity to think about other ideas like that. But again, that's okay. I didn't want to sit around and say, here's a bunch of things we have to get done by November 18th and create false deadlines. There's no reason to have that kind of rush.
Right. Absolutely. And when you're steering a large ship, you want to make sure that you're doing it carefully and you don't run into any icebergs, and even just, making subtle turns like staking or buying using cash. These are still things that require a lot of thoughtfulness. And so I understand and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you're putting in to this strategy. And so November 18th is the date that you've mentioned. In the meantime, we're seeing Hyperliquid continue to build very meaningful technology and recreate and really build the financial system on chain. When you're looking at HIP-3 and you're seeing the success of it, what are some of the things that you think? You mentioned that's really most exciting, and I would tend to agree. And so I'm curious how you're seeing this ecosystem develop. Will we just continue to see the proliferation of HIP-3 markets take the world by storm? How do you think the strategy of going into Hype, can you just put together what the thesis for Hyperliquid is at this point on a short, mid, long-term time horizon?
Yeah, look, I think the thesis is, I'll say it this way. When I first got involved with Hyperliquid, I saw it as an exchange that has its own L1 blockchain. The more I've learned about it and the more I've come to understand, it's actually somewhat the opposite. It's an L1 blockchain that has an exchange.
Yeah.
And I think the strategy for Hyperliquid is that's not going to be the only exchange. Have all these other HIP-3 builders, and one day there'll be a HIP-4 and a HIP-5 probably, but other people building their own perp exchanges on whatever assets that they find interesting and where they think they can get liquidity. And that will really compound on top of each other. And as I said before, we all talk about real assets going on chain. I think this is how it's going to happen. Not 100%, but a lot of it.
Yeah.
When it comes to what's in the future, the big elephant in the room, of course, is that perps aren't traded in the United States. I think I have no inside information. I have no special information, but I think that that could certainly happen over time. This administration certainly seems a whole lot more interested in sort of the different advancements in the crypto markets than other administrations have. And I really do think perps are a good security for trading lots of assets. Perps, you can do perps with leverage, you can do perps without leverage. I would argue that, perps with leverage, to me, are a much better retail product than options are. And as we all know, like options, the options are a big percentage of what's traded out there right now. I don't know. I don't have the numbers offhand, but I'm pretty sure that a large percentage of Robinhood's revenue comes from options trading, not, equity spot trading.
Yeah.
And, like when you trade options, you got to think about expiration dates and different Greek letters and complicated premium calculations and all that sort of stuff. And it's not easy. Perps, like, here's the price and, here's how much leverage I have and here's the price at which I get liquidated out. It's a whole lot simpler to understand. You're
absolutely right. It is an extremely intuitive product, and options are not. You don't have to worry about Greeks. It's right there. It's familiar, and it has a much narrower knowledge gap than something like options. And so you speak about sort of the regulatory landscape, how this might evolve with respect to perps. Right now, Binance has, a perps offering. Coinbase has a perps offering. There are some regulatory moats at play. You're seeing some of the dynamic shift. CZ has gotten pardoned. And so how do you expect centralized exchanges to compete, or other L1s offering perps? How do you see Hyperliquid fitting into this dynamic and this landscape as the regulation eventually opens up to perps in the US?
Yeah, look, I think and again, I don't speak for Hyperliquid. I know them. I don't speak for them. My guess, my impression, my expectation is that they're going to be kind of the AWS of this. Obviously, like Binance is not going to use Hyperliquid's, systems for creating their perp exchange. But as perp exchange has become more used in lots of different things for lots of different assets, no one's going to sit there and want to build their own exchange. The cost and the time of building an exchange and potentially building your own blockchain, like that's just really hard. So to be able to just, use Hyperliquid through HIP-3 is just so much easier, and it allows people with a good idea and an understanding of how markets to work to really do it relatively quickly. And again, it's sort of the AWS of these systems, being the backbone, being the back office, and allowing other people's front ends. Like right now, I should know this offhand, but I don't. I don't think on MetaMask, if you pull up the app, when you trade perps on MetaMask, I don't think anywhere it says, brought to you by Hyperliquid.
Right.
Right. But and just like when you go to, whatever website that's using AWS, it doesn't say brought to you by AWS.
Right.
It's the backbone, and AWS is making their money and they're happy, and Hyperliquid making their money and they'll be happy. And that to me is a really exciting business strategy.
It certainly is. MetaMask has announced that they'll be using Hyperliquid for perps. 𝘬𝘵 is another wallet that's getting a lot more attention and utilization.
Phantom as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Phantom use it.
And right. Phantom using Hyperliquid for perps. And so as you were describing this shifting landscape, it started to put some pieces together in my mind, because I have a feeling, right, all these crypto native, these wallet platforms that have a strong end user relationship, they're integrating they're integrating perps via Hyperliquid in the back end. But I have a feeling there's a bigger pie at play here as regulation evolves to the point where more regulated agencies and firms are able to get into the perp space. That is where some of this really shines. It's not MetaMask and 𝘬𝘵 that we're talking about getting into perps and using Hyperliquid in the back end. It's the traditional options players. It's the Citibanks, the Citadels. It's these guys, Goldman Sachs. Are they going to be building out their own exchange? Look, we've seen M&A sort of evolve over the last few months, and we're seeing MasterCard go and acquire Zero Hash. Stripe is acquiring. This is happening in the payments world. It's not yet happening in the exchange world. Do you see a world where major Wall Street financial institutions could leverage Hyperliquid in the back for a regulated perps exchange offering in the US?
Look, I think that'd be great, and I can definitely see it. It won't be tomorrow because at the moment, the regulations wouldn't allow it, and these big banks aren't going to do something that's not, clearly legal in the US. But just to pretend for a second we're in a world where it is, and Bank One and Bank Two are both thinking about doing a perp exchange, and Bank One decides to build their own. I cannot imagine how long that would take inside a bank. It would take long for anybody, but inside a bank, which are not necessarily known for being the fastest when it comes to technological innovation, versus Bank Two, who might say, you know what, I'm going to use Hyperliquid. They're going to have it up a lot quicker. The other thing I like about how Hyperliquid has done it is these things are permissionless.
Right.
So, like here in the traditional finance world, like we're all used to, oh, you're going to go use XYZ company for some sort of backbone. You go meet with them, you meet with their CEO. Yeah, your lawyers start writing contracts. It takes time. Are you getting a better deal or a worse deal than the next guy? Like all that stuff just slows everything down and is like friction to getting from A to B. Hyperliquid has done it permissionlessly, and I don't think they care if you're going to be a great customer or a little tiny customer. The deal's the deal, and it's on the website, and that's it. And you can go talk to Jeff Yan, but I don't think he's going to give you any special deal.
No.
Maybe he'll be happy to see you, but it's not going to get you anywhere. And that, it really levels the playing field in a lot of ways, and it's just so simple.
Yeah. David, I think you're going to have a lot of fun in the position that
I'm already having fun.
I love it because, and what makes me say that is, we've had Ethereum DATs that come on, they talk about their capital allocation strategy, and you're right, it's staking, right? But then they talk, okay, well, what comes after that? Okay, we can use some DeFi. Hyperliquid, is it such it's at a point where there's so much utility around the token. And as we think more about what HIP-3 is and how we can leverage it and how it's possible to deploy some of the hype, I can understand and see a world where the capital allocation strategy you laid it out, it's very simple. It's very, straightforward in the early days. But as this industry evolves, there's so many opportunities to get really creative with some of the business opportunities that are at stake here, where you're not just vanilla staking, you're I think it's 200,000 hype in order to get a ticker. We saw that play out during the.
Oh yeah, get a ticker. Yeah. But to be a HIP-3 builder, be a HIP-3 market, you need 500,000 hype.
Right. And so as a company that has a strong capital base and you're essentially serving as an ambassador to the Hyperliquid ecosystem, you guys can go out and you have the hype in order to deploy some of these markets. You can go out and be the stewards in order to go and make some of these companies come over to hype and maybe convince them otherwise from building their own L1.
Yeah, look, the simplest version of that is you were talking about a big bank building HIP-3, pick your name, but some, highly creditworthy counterparty wants to do it. They're figuring out their budget. They're sitting there saying, wait a second, I got to put up, I got to come up with $500,000 hype. That's whatever, 20 some odd $1 million. We don't feel like doing that. We could put our hype up for them.
Right.
And again, if we're earning more than our staking yield and we're very comfortable with the credit, that's the excitement here. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. And I think those opportunities, I think we'll have lots of those opportunities. I think we'll have the ability to be picky, as we should. And again, I'm a traditional finance guy. I've been doing, private equity investing in financial services for 25 years. We're not going to reach when it comes to these kind of opportunities for yield, because I think there's, the underlying reason to do this is because you're bullish on hype, full stop. Getting additional yield beyond that is sort of the icing on the cake. It's not the cake itself.
Right. Makes sense. David, how much inspiration are you taking from the existing treasury companies that are out there? Hyperliquid strategy, Bitcoin strategy, MicroStrategy, right? These guys have been around and sort of, we're pioneers in the space. There's Ethereum DATs that are out there now. Do you like what they're doing when it comes to their capital strategy, how they're raising capital? Or is this really, because Hyperliquid is such a unique opportunity, there's really no other example or playbook that you're looking at out there?
No, look, I would say, a middle school baseball coach I had years ago would say, you got to look at different people's swings, different people's pitches, and you gotta like find the things you like about some, and then find the things you don't like about some, and try to make that combination yours. And then in the end, that'll be you. You won't be a little bit of this guy, a little bit of that guy. That'll be you. And I think there are definitely lots of things we're seeing that from some of these stats that we will want to imitate, and we think they're doing a good job. I think there's some stuff less that I'm seeing and more that I'm hearing about that I think some of these guys are already being way too aggressive with their capital. Yeah. I've heard lots of stories, no particular names, but I've talked to a bunch of dealers that I think are talking about how a lot of these guys are, whether it's, buying calls or selling puts or selling calls, like doing lots of sort of, option strategies with their underlying tokens that I would worry a lot about. I think they're doing it either to generate yield or to generate cash. That would worry me a lot. Look, if I knew a bunch of cash was coming in and I liked the current price today, and I thought the option premium, the vol I was paying wasn't absurd, which a lot of these things are right now, of course I'd look to buy some calls. Mm-hmm. But, selling puts and selling calls to generate cash, that could be risky business. Yeah. You sell a put, the thing moves in the wrong direction. And look, these things are volatile, right? They're going to move around even if over time they go up. Mm-hmm. You could get hung out along the way. And selling calls, sounds great until the thing goes up a lot. And you have to explain to your shareholders why, we know that the underlying token went up a lot, but we didn't really get the benefit because we sold a bunch of calls. Yeah. Like that's a tough discussion. Yeah. Especially because they think that they're exposed to the underlying. And if it goes up a lot, they expect a lot of money. And by the way, these investors, at least a lot of them are pretty sophisticated. Mm-hmm. If they want to sell calls, they can sell calls. Right. They don't have to sell calls. Yeah. David, really appreciate you spending your time with us. Just got a couple more questions. Sure.
Robinhood recently listed Hype. How big of a deal is that, and how important is it to integrate Hype? I know we're bringing the traditional financial system onto Hype and Hyperliquid. How important is the other direction, bringing Hype to the existing financial markets?
Look, I would say there are two sides of my brain right now, and there probably will be two sides of my brain on this for a while. One side of my brain wants to be the only place in the United States someone can get Hype exposure. When we started this, we were the only one where you can go. So on one hand, scarcity value is great, and that will increase our MNAV. The other side of my brain says, you know what? The more people, the more avenues there are for people to buy Hype who want to buy Hype, the higher the underlying token will go. And that's just good for everybody. It's good for the ecosystem. It's good for us because we own a lot of the token. So as I said, I have two sides of my brain on here, and it depends on what mood you catch me in. I'll tell you whether I'm happy or sad about Robinhood. And, there's another story. I think 21 Shares announced they're doing an ETF in the United States.
Yep.
I have two sides of my brain.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, and the last question I got for you, man, looking ahead, 2026, we're in Q4 now, 2026 coming up. What would winning look like for Hyperliquid in terms of adoption or market share? What are you looking for out of Hyperliquid in 2026?
I guess I would say two things. Vis-a-vis the system itself, more people using it, more places where perps become regulatorily acceptable. Obviously, the big ones in the United States there, and I think more people, more retail investors appreciating that perps are a good way to trade whatever asset that they're interested in. I think that's one side. On the other side, obviously, it's more investors knowing what Hyperliquid is, understanding the sort of connection between the token and the buybacks and how it's sort of equity-like in a lot of ways. It is far from a household name right now. Even among crypto experts, lots of people never heard of Hyperliquid. I think a lot more have heard about it now than back in May when I started taking this really seriously. But even still, there are a lot of people, it's still breaking through. And I think we're going to see that in the valuation of the token, and we're going to see that in the usage.
Yeah, very, very well said. Once someone really wraps their mind around Hyperliquid, it really is a breakthrough. So we anticipate that more and more people will have these breakthroughs. David, thank you so much for coming on and spending your time with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure, and would love to host you again sometime soon. Maybe later in November, but you're going to have your hands full. So best of luck and Godspeed to your MNAV, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, brother.
Really appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you. Man, absolute pleasure. David's the man. All right, we're gonna keep things moving right along here, guys. We've been hammering the drum on Hyperliquid for a long, long time. So if you don't know by now you know. Our next guest is 𝘗𝘠𝗏 from Starknet. Starknet, great friend of the show. These guys, we love having them on. We're gonna switch gears a little bit. We've been talking about tokenization. We've been talking about stable coins. We've been talking about digital asset treasuries, Hyperliquid strategy, CEO. That's always a fun one. But now we've got 𝘗𝘠𝗏. This one, we're gonna turn up the technical dial a little bit. We're gonna have some fun. We're gonna chat about ZK. We're gonna chat about Starknet and all the exciting things around 𝘂𝘂𝑚𝓠, which is Starknet's strategy these days. Guys, let's bring 𝘗𝘠𝗏 up on the stage. There he is. 𝘗𝘠𝗏, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. So fun to be here. A huge fan, so yeah, appreciate it, and yeah, excited.
Absolutely, brother. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. We're gonna be talking about Bitcoin staking today. I had Josh Swihart from Zcash and CEO of Electric Coin yesterday, and I asked him, there's a big Zcash Bitcoin kind of friction that's happening these days, and I asked him, if Zcash has OP_CAT, if OP_CAT gets into Bitcoin, are we going to see the Zcash Bitcoin? Are we going to see this turn and go the other way back into Bitcoin? And he said, no. So, I know OP_CAT generally bringing more and more Bitcoin onto Starknet is a really big, important part of the story. Give us an update on what is happening on Starknet these days. How are you guys looking when it comes to bringing more and more Bitcoin onto Starknet? And yeah, man, let's get into it.
So first and foremost, I want to say that OPCAT advocacy, or the idea of having OPCAT part of the Bitcoin protocol, is not a necessity. It's something that we think can empower Bitcoin, but there's a lot of other ways we want to incorporate Bitcoin into Starknet and actually make Starknet a great place for Bitcoiners, and also help Bitcoin become something even better or stronger with a larger, I would say, community, keeping the same values. The most evident example is our collaboration with Alpen. So this is kind of I say news, depending how close do you follow. So Alpen are an amazing technical team, and we're working together to produce a PTVM bridge to Starknet. So we are not waiting to something that is up to the Bitcoin community to decide if they want to go through. We don't want to push it. We think it's a very, very interesting and amazing direction that can happen and might take time. And in the meanwhile, we want to maximize trustlessness and maximize Bitcoin utility without compromising Bitcoin values. And PTVM, we think, with strong technical teams like Alpen, with our ZK knowledge, is an amazing place you can go right here, right now. I don't know if I answered the question, but
totally.
Alongside these technical roots, we're also working into making Bitcoin a part of Starknet protocol. This is Bitcoin staking. This is kind of the thing I was working on for the last few months, I would say. So more on that, I think, in the next questions, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us more about it. I'd love to know what you've been working on and generally what your focus is at Starknet.
Yeah, so I'm a product manager at Starkware, like the Starknet devs, basically. I've been there for more than 2 years. I've been working on staking solely for the last, I think, year and a half since the protocol staking launched, basically. So that's November. So that's a year. So, but as a product manager, you work on stuff before they're live. So a year and a half almost of working on staking, and up until now was just Stark staking. But recently, almost a month ago, we launched Bitcoin staking, which was, I think, a huge step forward for our ecosystem. Putting Bitcoin as an asset is something very, very important to us, alongside the Bitcoin values. So so that's my I would say story. I came from a very technical background. That's I would say very common at Starkware. So I graduated math and physics, and I'm a big nerd of math and physics and ZK in general. So that's I think no surprise for a lot of people coming from Starkware. And so that's the personal hobbies and stuff.
Man, we could nerd out about a lot of that kind of stuff. Quantum, generally what we're seeing in the AI space. Man, don't even get me started. There's that comet that is supposedly going through our atmosphere right now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, we'll keep this one pretty focused on Bitcoin and Bitcoin staking then. Could you walk us through what the mechanism is these days, right? Because, as we understand it, there's a couple different flavors of Bitcoin staking out there now. We've had some Bitcoin rollups that are really trying to focus on this. We've had them on the show before. And until we see a really native way of doing covenants on Bitcoin, we're not going to fully unleash this. But, what is the flavor of Bitcoin staking that's available on Starknet now? And generally, why have you guys taken this approach?
Amazing. So currently, what you can do in Starknet is, if you bring your Bitcoin to Starknet, and in a minute I'll explain what I mean by that.
Sure.
You can stake it. You can literally lock it and you can delegate it to whatever validator you want, and in that way you're participating in the consensus protocol of Starknet. So that's the underlying idea, the same way you would do with Stark tokens. But as we all know, Bitcoin doesn't live outside of Bitcoin in a clear way. I need to define it. I need to explain what I mean by that. And currently what I mean by that is we support several reputable wrappers, Bitcoin wrappers that are familiar. It's WBTC, Lombard BTC, TBTC, and Solve BTC. They're all stakeable assets at Starkware, at Starknet. And you can, if you hold any of these tokens on Starknet, you can lock them the same way you would lock Stark, delegate it to a certain validator and participate in the consensus protocol. You'll earn Stark as rewards. So that's not surprising. I'm not able to mint Bitcoin. So the only thing I mint basically is Starks, and it's Stark rewards. There's also LSTs on top. You can participate it with getting a tokenized version of your stake position, and you can participate in Starknet DeFi. So this is a bit different than, I would say, Babylon staking, where your Bitcoin stays on the Bitcoin network, but the connection between the stake Bitcoin and the economy of the network is I would say slim, or not as emphasized as in our case. So we are opting in for composability, basically, and the support of our DeFi ecosystem and generally our ecosystem. We understand this is not suitable for all Bitcoiners. To be frank, I don't need all Bitcoin to be staked on Starknet. I need some people who want to do it. And again, I understand both choices. So the main reason we opt in for this is composability and DeFi, and having this TVL actually help and support our ecosystem and give utility to Bitcoin. So that's the first step. I can go into like future steps and how this actually connects to trustlessness and bridging, etc.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to hear about how Starknet and Bitcoin staking specifically can help empower Starknet to ultimately connect more of this economy on chain. So the idea is, when you have a canonical bridge, and when I mean canonical bridge, I know there's a lot of different either L2s or companies that are saying that they have a canonical way of bridging Bitcoin, but I want to say trust minimizing canonical version of Bitcoin. This is very important. We would want to migrate the stakeability to this canonical trust minimizing version. And trust minimizing is putting a lot on it. So I would say that it needs to be trust minimizing. I think it needs to be trustworthy. So it needs to be reputable companies building it and being audited and being fairly secure. Right. And the last thing we're seeing a lot is there's a lot of work being done around taxation and regulation. So the implementation also should take into account these very, very, I would say, real things that affect people that hold Bitcoin and want to live their life with Bitcoin. So we are doing this. We're working with Alpen. We're working with Anchorage as a side note of a huge custodian team that holds a lot of it supports Bitcoin and believes in it. And we want to merge these three directions together. So we started with, I would say, DeFi-oriented Bitcoin staking version that is not suitable for all Bitcoin holders. We know that, but we are also putting a lot of effort in building trust minimizing solutions to help or give access to Bitcoiners who want more utility to their Bitcoin without compromising Bitcoin values. And by the end of it, they will connect. Yeah, absolutely. And so, a question that we come to on this show quite often when we're talking about institutional projects, enterprise products, all of these, generally we see tokenization as such a movement that's happening on chain. We're bringing all of this capital on chain. The natural question is, well, okay, I'm getting this yield, but where does the yield come from, right? So when I'm staking my Bitcoin on Starknet, I realize there's maybe some different venues, but generally, where is the yield coming from? Is it coming from token emissions, right? Inflationary token emissions like we saw in 2021, or is it coming from real business that generates revenue, and these projects and businesses are passing that revenue back in the form of yield? Is it one or the other, mixture of both, or somewhere in the middle? So that's a great question. So first and foremost, today it's token emissions. So it's similar to our staking program for stocks. It's not different. It's not a different kind of any yield. The inflation currently is at 1%. Okay. So it's not insane inflation that we boost up and I think is not sustainable. It's lower than most protocols you see. I don't want to, I would say tar anyone with feathers, but I think it's very, very, very responsible inflation. Okay. In the upcoming evolution of the protocol, I think you'd see MEV and fees being more significant. So in the sense of, the protocol itself and the congestion in the protocol would give rise to more abilities to commodity, produce commodity on top of it. Currently, it's based on token emissions, and specifically the Bitcoin part of it is also not very complicated,
basically we allocated 25% of consensus power to Bitcoiners. So no matter how much Bitcoin there is in the system, the consensus power of Bitcoiners is 25%. This means they get a significant chunk of potential rewards. So either, you will have the power for 25% MEV or 25% of token emissions, but there's no sole control of Starknet by Bitcoiners. And this is also important. We think that the idea of proof of stake and specifically Starknet is not to be, something that people from Bitcoin control solely, but we want to bring them on board and make Starknet a platform for Bitcoiners to enjoy in that sense.
Yeah, awesome. And so could you walk through what some of the steps you think are to ultimately bring this vision that you have, connecting these chains? Could you just explain how we get from the current vanilla Bitcoin staking model that we have today with token emissions to this very vibrant, very robust ecosystem of MEV and fees and real Bitcoin yield and interoperability, trust minimized interop? How do we get from point A to point B?
So I want to say that we're working in parallel, and with the reason I want to say it is there's already real Bitcoin yield on Starknet. It's not by staking. You have huge utilization for Bitcoin in lending protocols in Starknet. This is for if you go to Aave on Ethereum, you'll get lower than 1%, way lower than 1% for for putting WBTC in the protocol. So for supplying WBTC, you won't get any money because nobody's borrowing WBTC. People are supplying WBTC to borrow against it, but people are not supplying it. No one's borrowing WBTC, but it's not the case on Starknet's economy. You already see huge utilization for WBTC pools, TBTC pools. And the reason is not only Bitcoin staking, but the economy and trades that are possible, either delta neutral, either perps on Starknet, that make these opportunities good. So if you have WBTC generally, you can have native yield. And when I mean native, I don't mean like staking. I mean, you can have actual DeFi yield by supplying it as collateral on Starknet that is way bigger than other places. So this traction and flywheel is something that we're already working on, like I said, with Bitcoin wrappers. On the other end, if you have any kind of canonical bridge trust minimizing token, it should be treated the same, if not with more, I would say, potential. So I'll give you an example. There's a potential of getting a trust minimizing either BTM or something else type of token that is also, by bridging it under some circumstances, would not be considered as a text event. This is an amazing step forward of combining the three things that I said. So you'll have a trust minimizing bridge, which when you put your Bitcoin there and getting a representative on Starknet doesn't mean that you did anything. You're not owing anyone anything, and you can then use the same Bitcoin on Starknet to utilize, either put it as collateral, either stake it, it doesn't really matter. We can go into more technical details. I would say that I always want to split between the things that we're working currently and sure that we're going to have to OpCat, where OpCat, and there's other basically potential changes in the Bitcoin protocol that I don't think we should count on. I don't think it's respectful to count on them. So we're preparing to them. Sometimes we think they are for the better, but it's a very, very wide community, varied community, and it's not for me by any chance to dictate anything about it.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. Sometimes the dynamic of decision making on Bitcoin is such a black box. Like, it's so mysterious how these changes are enacted, because we've had a lot of these projects on the show. We've had a lot of people that come on and they say generally the consensus is yes, this would help Bitcoin, but it still is not implemented. Why? I mean, this will be my last question. I'm just curious why, if it seems like there's consensus, why isn't, how does it ultimately become implemented?
So I'll give you I'll answer a question with a question. Apologies, but
it's okay.
we already discussed, like you said quantum before me, so I'm okay to say it a second time. So
Yeah.
quantum cryptography, we know there's an issue with cryptography in Bitcoin if you consider some possibilities of quantum computers. And this is, everybody's saying in a lot of different ways, you just need to agree upon a solution for all of the 80% Bitcoin that can be saved. You just need to agree about a solution. And still the community, like getting a concrete decision in such a decentralized community, it's literally decentralized from a lot of different layers, from the technological layer, from the ownership layer. Like there's tons of different decentralizations and small cliques and groups that I would say keep each other from any kind of sole control, that even something that is evident, that is needed to some, or like nobody would lose anything by implementing it, basically, is still getting hard time to be implemented or getting focus. So like OPCAT is much more controversial than saying we just want to safeguard existing Bitcoin against a technology that might come to fruition. That's very vanilla of saying, and it's still not being implemented or being discussed yet. So I don't know. I to be honest, right? I've read Block Wars, like I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast. I still don't know exactly what are the steps for getting, and I don't think there is a recipe for it.
Right.
For like, these are the steps to get something implemented and used or changed in the Bitcoin protocol.
Yeah, makes sense. It adds to the mystique of the protocol itself, and it's probably a feature, not a bug, right? The fact that it's difficult to make changes has led to its Lindy effect and made it so sustainable, and the longevity of it so far. So it certainly seems like it's a feature, not a bug. Natal, when you're kind of flushing out what the rest of these staking features looks like, what do you think is the most important feature that you're currently working on at Starknet? What do you think, these L2s in general, there's a lot of the L2s, a lot of rollups, there's more coming on chain. People are very excited about something like a mega ETH, right? Like these different things. But I'm curious, when you're thinking about Starknet, what do you think, is there anything holding Starknet back, or what do you think is the most important thing to focus on at Starknet to ultimately create more applications and more products that find product market fit and allow capital freely flow between Bitcoin and Ethereum and the rest of the rollup ecosystem? Is there anything that comes to mind?
So I think if you would ask me this like a year ago, I'd probably say something very, very simple that but now I think as being a product manager in this ecosystem for long enough and looking at success stories, I think it's hard work. I think it's looking down at every team, assessing if they're serious, and helping them succeed in the most detailed way of looking who are the users, who are we targeting to. And to that extent, I can say that BTC, and so what I'm answering basically is there's not a single solution. Focus is the solution. And when you are focused, there's tons of hard work that actually accumulates. And I think Starknet is focusing, and it becomes more and more focused. So it used to be the case that there weren't a lot of L2s, and Starknet was basically saying, hey, we're doing a new language, we're doing CK, we're doing interop, we're doing, tons of different, we're doing capacity, we're doing tons of different things because we don't know what L2s are going to be. And right now we're saying something different. We're saying, listen, we basically think that the difference between L2s and L1 is not the major thing. I don't think we are saying L2 that much. I don't think it what drives us. I think what drives us basically is to enable and untap potential in blockchain ecosystems, and Bitcoin to be the most evident one. And what we have in our arsenal to do this is super nerdy people and super hardworking people. And this is why we want to focus on Bitcoin and specifically DeFi. And you can see, I think, this focus coming to fruition. So we have 3 out of the 10 top 10 perps in all of crypto are Starknet technology. That's Ajax, Extended are on Starknet, public Starknet.
That's right.
So
We've spoken to Extended. Yeah. How are they doing?
So that's amazing. And like one of the I think one of the most exciting success stories in general in blockchain, but in our case, and it's very close to heart. So when you see something like that, and when you hear about something like Focus Tree, which is an amazing app, also on chain on Starknet, because we built account abstraction way, way early when nobody thought about it. So the idea of focus and hard work, in my opinion, are the only way. So I can't tell you like, oh, we need another standard for interrupt bridging, or if we'll go millisecond or 20 milliseconds in block confirmation. This is the thing. I don't think any of it. I don't think there's any specific metric. It depends if you're focused, if you understand who are you focusing at as users and as clientele. And I think we're getting this focus more and more.
Yeah, I really like what you said about focus in general, which is that when you have focus, you're not focused on one particular thing. You actually have a lot of things that you're able to stay adaptable and focus on whatever is most important at that time. And so it's actually a much more diverse set of things that you're able to accomplish when you're just focused in general.
And you need to be able to say no. So I can tell you, to some extent, there's some interrupt features. There's some there's a lot of stuff you say no to, and that's the idea of basically how to get it. You need to be brave enough to say, okay, I cannot do everything, but everything I touch is I see in a specific prism. So it helps you understand, what's better for your network and what's not. So the more focused we'll be, I think the better we'll succeed, because the people and the brains are there. And the community, I have to say this, one of the most amazing communities. I'm about to go to Argentina, Buenos Aires, for the Dev Connect and stuff. And it's the most fun ever being out there and meeting all the people. So that's, yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, the energy, the vibes, it's so much fun, but it's also so constructive when people get together and they're able to exchange ideas at the speed of light, being in the same room with one another. It's no longer constrained by our telegrams and our emails and this, like, we're actually able to move at such a quicker pace. What are you most excited about? I'll be in Dev Connect as well. I'm really looking forward to it. What are you most excited for in Buenos Aires?
So I'm biased, but I love the staking summit. So it's going to be my third staking summit for Staking Rewards. So shout out for Staking Rewards. They're an amazing team. I've been working on staking for enough time to be part of it. So I'm going to have two panels in their conference, and the vibe there is just amazing. It's super professional, and like you said, ideas in the speed of light. That's how it feels back there. I heard about Babylon, way early before it got big, just right. From the Staking Rewards, from their staking summit. So I think they're an amazing place for innovation and to hear about new ideas. And the team themselves are just super nice people. Love them all. So I'm really excited about meeting them and I would say the entire environment of the Staking Summit. And Dev Connect, actually, I just want to see it. Like, I'm excited for Buenos Aires, and I'm excited. I also have, I almost forgot. We are going to have a huge Stark event ourselves, and I have a talk in there. So okay, you should definitely come and talk. Yeah. So we'll touch base, I think, afterwards in Telegram. Already 𝘠𝘪𝘵 and stuff, and Kareem. They would share all the info. And Buenos Aires, man, I've never been to South America. I'm excited by that. Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. It'll be my first time in Buenos Aires as well. Been to a couple places in South America, but this one feels different. This one feels very, very exciting. And we're also seeing a lot of projects really hit their stride. So I'm very excited for this event that you guys are going to be hosting in Buenos Aires. Also, Ethereum conferences just have a different vibe. I went to Asia, Token 2049, KBW, Korean Blockchain Week. Ethereum conferences, man, there's a crypto native feeling in the air when these builders get together. And you're absolutely right. This is the one where it feels like you can kind of discover those new projects very, very early. And so I imagine when it comes to Starknet as a roll-up ecosystem, you guys are potentially looking at, oh, what is that new project? Let me partner. Or what is that, this application idea? Oh, we should build this, right? And so cherry picking these ideas so that you can ultimately bring them home to Starknet.
I would say even more than that. One of the most exciting things of building a permissionless chain is you meet people that are building on your chain you didn't know existed, and they're doing amazing work. So you come up with people and say, oh man, we think Starknet is amazing. You never met them, and they're just into it so badly and they're building amazing stuff. So it's not only looking at other places, they're actually getting to know more about the ecosystem itself. And it's, yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah, so am I. 𝘗𝘠, thank you so much, man, for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. Very much looking forward to all the exciting things coming out of Bitcoin, coming out of Starknet. Bitcoin staking is continuing to accelerate. And of course, excited for DevConnect in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, likewise. See you there.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll see you next time. We'll see you in Buenos Aires.
Thank you.
Cheers,
yeah, it was
brother.
amazing. Thank you. Cheers.
All right. 𝘗𝘂 is the man. He's crushing it. Bitcoin staking, bringing Bitcoin to Ethereum, making Bitcoin programmable. This is what we wanted. It's no longer just a pet rock. Bitcoin is now able to be deployed into smart contracts, and we can now get yield on Bitcoin. Very, very exciting. All right, let's see. We've got a bit of we've got some time, which is exciting. Time is all we've got. Before our next guest, who is coming from 𝘬𝘯𝘓. Let's see. All right. I think we are going to do a little bit of standby here. Let's do a little bit of standby. We're going to get organized. We're going to come back, and we're going to bring you closer to 𝘬𝘯𝘓 and talk about all the exciting things that they have coming on over there, guys. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. See you in a few. All right. Steven McIntosh, the CIO at 𝘬𝘳𝘵. That is the 𝘬 digital asset treasury company. We've had several DATs. We had David from Hyperliquid Strategies on earlier. Tokenization is taking the world by storm, man. I mean, this is the new meta these days. We're bringing on-chain finance to the public markets, and we're really making it happen, man. Pleasure to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, it's your first time on, and we haven't had a lot of representation from the 𝘬 world. So I'd love a little bit of an intro just to kick us off. We can keep it pretty concise, and then we can dig in.
Yeah, sure. So 𝘬𝘳 is, a really interesting kind of blockchain because Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche are all account-based models, right? And 𝘬𝘳 is an object-oriented model that came out of the team's background at Facebook. These engineers, the 5 founders, were hand-selected by Mark Zuckerberg to build a crypto network that would be rolled out to 3 billion people. That was the Libra project, right? They also worked on Diem, the stablecoin initiative. An interesting counterfactual, had that business been allowed to flourish, I think it would have been the biggest business in crypto, bigger than Tether, bigger than Coinbase with that distribution, right? Luckily for me, as an early venture investor in 𝘂𝘂 Labs, the team that built 𝘬𝘳, they left and they took a lot of their innovations, specifically the Move smart contract programming language that they devised at Facebook. The reason they built it is because they looked at C++, Java, Solidity, Solana's Rust implementation, and they found it all wanting because of native security problems. They needed to understand how the code base, the schema, would treat intrinsic properties such as assets and value transfer. And they really built Move to be secure by design and also scalable. And when you look at the future of what's coming in Web3, I think one of the big unlocks is going to be agentic commerce. So the kind of intersection of AI and crypto. For that to occur, we need a totally different coordination model. And with 𝘬𝘳 Move, what you have is the ability to handle billions, trillions of transactions in parallel concurrently. And a good analogy to think through for your community or your listeners is that an account-based model is like everyone settles through one till. So imagine Black Friday and everyone has to go through one till to process all the transactions.
Trampling those people.
It'd be crazy, right? And whereas with 𝘬𝘳, every agent, every asset has its own till, and they can happen in infinite parallel scale. That's what an object-oriented model unlocks. And for me personally, I previously ran an artificial intelligence business, which I sold to a New York Stock Exchange listed acquirer. I'm very deeply focused on high performance engineering teams and what they can deliver. And when I first met the 𝘂𝘂 Labs founders in Palo Alto, I was like, wow, this looks like an OpenAI or a Google for Web3. And the throne for who is the Google of finance hasn't been taken yet. And with 𝘬𝘳, despite only being 2 years old, they've got record transaction growth, hugely growing TVL, and more importantly, growth in developers and wallets active on the network. I think that what we're about to see with 𝘬𝘳 is some really interesting new commerce categories being created. And one thing I'll just kind of say is that the team haven't just built 𝘬𝘳. Right, they've built a composable and holistic stack that supports the canonical high throughput blockchain. They built Walrus, which is decentralized programmable storage. They built Seal, which is key management and secrets management. They built Nautilus for verified off-chain compute. And then they built something called ZK Login, which allows you to log in with your kind of Google single sign-on credentials. Now, that is equivalent to a GCP, an AWS, or an Azure, which allowed the SaaS industry to proliferate over the past 15 years. I think that 𝘬𝘳 is building something akin to the SaaS stack, but for Web3, and that's what will allow the unlock of agentic commerce.
I have a bunch of questions here about your capital allocation strategy for all this 𝘬𝘳. I'd honestly rather keep going on this thread about agentic commerce because I think it continues to explore and really meet where we're seeing the CapEx cycle happen in the US, in some of these AI stocks. That is propelling a lot of the growth that is happening, not just in the traditional markets, but also in digital assets. And so I also had the chance to sit down with Alex, the founder of Nansen, who's building this platform, this intelligence platform, and is starting to unleash a lot of the intelligence in the form of programmable finance when it comes to making these agents actually useful in making transactions and conducting some of this DeFi. So as you're thinking through what 𝘬𝘳 is available to do and what they can provide to the agentic economy, I'm of the mind that everyone's going to have their own agents and they're going to be conducting transactions on our behalf. Now, is 𝘬𝘳 thinking about deploying applications that will provide end users and consumers with their agents, or are they more so thinking about the infrastructure approach? Is 𝘬𝘳 thinking more, hey, we want to connect all the agents that are out there, but we're not necessarily going to issue the agents for the end user?
Well, let's take one example that kind of has come to market in the past few weeks. Google DeepMind penciled this really important framework for how we could think about agentic payments called AP2, right? And they chose 𝘬𝘳 as a launch partner, and they demonstrated in a pilot how 𝘬𝘳 could be used to facilitate an agent marketplace with transactions happening concurrently, right? And that example is just the tip of the iceberg of what's to come. I think 𝘬𝘳 will be the coordination layer. Yeah, there might be agents that are developed from the ecosystem. 𝘬𝘳 is a network, right? And as I mentioned, it's got all these kind of composable pieces of infrastructure that will allow for you to pass the trust boundary. You used the word programmable, and that's the one I would focus on. We were, very lucky, I think, to, be introduced to this kind of meta of high performance blockchains by Solana. They focused on a really interesting kind of a proposition, which is like engineering optimization at the hardware level. 𝘬𝘳 has the same. The more machines you run at the validator set, it scales linearly. But what's interesting is that 𝘬𝘳 is an object-oriented model. And as I mentioned, going back to that analogy of kind of like Black Friday and everyone having to settle through one till, what 𝘬𝘳 Move and its object-oriented approach allows for is concurrent processing of microtransactions and fast path finality and fast path consensus. And when you look at the reported numbers of ChatGPT of having 800 million weekly active users, just imagine you asked ChatGPT to give you 20%, 30% yield from DeFi across Solana, Ethereum, and 𝘬𝘳. It'll come up with like 3 great solutions about how you can do it, but it won't take that action for you. So crossing the Rubicon from intent to action is a hugely complex space, and you need coordination. That's what 𝘬𝘳 was built for. And as I say, you need to be able to make sure that those agents that can act independently and take economic actions, being economically empowered by stablecoins on your behalf, can do so in a trustless way, can do so with authentication, with verifiability, with kind of secrets management and encryption, which are really important if you've got sensitive data. So all of those feature sets have been delivered by all the products that the Mysten Labs team have built. And I think we're just on the edge of an explosion of agentic commerce, and 𝘬𝘳 is the only blockchain that can handle that complexity of transaction state. Just imagine, where we are right now in terms of like the big kind of breakout use cases in crypto, perps trading, borrow lending, stable coins. If we see agents proliferate, the amount of transactions, the amount of state that is going to be emitted is like orders of magnitude more than we have today. 𝘬𝘳 was designed for exactly that purpose. It was invented at Facebook to handle, the needs of 3 billion users, and the team carried that over with them when they built 𝘬𝘳. And the agentic payments pilot that they delivered on with Google DeepMind is just the beginning of what's to come.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you very eloquently articulated the distinction between LLMs and the intent that they can give us relative to the actually carrying that intent out and the execution of this intent. That is one distinction. On the other side, I'm curious how we can separate what Wall Street high frequency trading. A lot of this, I guess, is the term algo trading, right? It's algorithmic, but it's not necessarily agentic. This is where I'm curious to just dig in a little bit deeper if we can make that distinction. There's a lot of these protocols that are being put out there. You mentioned AP2, 𝘂𝘯𝘓02. There's MCP. All of this is for conducting and coordinating between agents. Could you help us understand how? And actually, maybe I can just frame this a little bit better, which is that I believe 𝘬𝘳 is going to coordinate across these standards. Maybe you can fill in some of the details, but 𝘂𝘯𝘓02, AP2, MCP are all possible on 𝘬𝘳. How do we take algo trading and the intent model and we really scale it to something agentic?
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. Like, so my previous company was in natural language processing. So, we had very large enterprise clients like investment banks such as Deutsche Bank, Nomura, JP Morgan, right through to asset managers like Capital Group and Vanguard. And, the use cases that we were delivering on for those clients were essentially in human communications in the front, middle, and back office. Think Bloomberg chats, think emails. And what we would be doing is dynamically converting unstructured communications into structured machine readable data that was available in a JSON format by the API that could be consumed downstream by broader parts of the IT real estate, such as Salesforce, ServiceNow, and event streaming, Kafka, robotic process automation, etc. But to kind of configure those intents to those actions was a lot of software. You had to kind of like build API routes. You had to make sure they were safe, they were performant. There's a lot of like engineering services that goes around making that kind of value chain come to life. Now, in the agentic web, we actually want to like pass through all of these different bespoke APIs. We want to make sure that you go from that intent to an action, and those agents can be economically empowered and independent with agency to go and, do swaps, do the basis trade, do like a loop trade on Pendle, move over here, move over there. That's coordination, but most importantly, you're passing the trust boundary. So how do you get verification? How do you get attestation about what those agents are doing? Well, that's where you start to use something like Nautilus. That's where you start to use something like Seal, which are these kind of core pillars of the SUI stack that the team have built. It's not just having a blockchain that's high performance. That's obviously extremely important, but you need all these other kind of products to come together to make sure that that agent can act in a way that's safeguarded, that's not going to go off the rails, that is verifiable, that you can see, you have recall on what it's doing. Like, that's really important. I don't think it's going to make sense just to have, ChatGPT that has like its kind of preferred API partners, and that's the future of the agentic web. I mean, come on, we live in an open internet. That can't be the future.
Yeah, if that's the future, I don't want to live in that. And so
exactly.
You and I and Sui, we're all building this this future that we want to see, we want to be a part of. I'll just toss out some facts here. Sui's TVL surged past 2.16 billion in October. Let's see what else. $50 million of buybacks are underway. Cantor Fitzgerald's bull case sees SUI at $49. You don't have to comment on all this. SUI's treasury hit 101 million plus SUI. The question I want to ask you is, what is the capital allocation strategy when you see all of these opportunities? You mentioned several tools and applications that are available on SUI. Generally, we're powering the agentic economy. As a capital allocator, how are you thinking through some of these strategies from a risk reward perspective so that you can ultimately, optimize for what SUI has to offer?
So the first thing I would say is that, look, rightly or wrongly, some market participants saw the DAT phenomenon as a trade. Right, we never saw that. We saw it as the opportunity to build the SUI bank. That's what we told to our investors. That's what we have told to the community. And what that means is that we are going to be a very powerful economic actor on the network, but more importantly, on Wall Street. We're going to bridge latent demand from institutional investors that have been throttled by the previous regime, the previous administration, from getting access to crypto. And in many respects, the role of a astute and dynamic and experienced management team is to be a conduit between that latent demand, that capital, and crypto. In our case, it's SUI, because we have a huge bull case that SUI can be the fastest horse in the race. We think it could easily eclipse the market cap of Solana. We think it could be the go-to developer platform, the go-to agentic web platform. So we have a very kind of convicted interest in the team, the technology, the founders. But as a business, as the CIO of SUI, what I've got to do is also meet investors where they are. Awareness on Wall Street about what these high-performance blockchains do and what they are is still pretty limited. Let's be honest. Maybe they've heard of Ethereum now through Tom Lee, and they're getting warmed up to Bitcoin over the past year or two through Saylor. But Solana, SUI, that's still kind of Hyperliquid. It's still new territory. And my job is to kind of educate, to talk about the incredible background of this team, to talk about the incredible growth, the statistics you just mentioned, but more importantly, to actually build infrastructure. So as SUI, we announced on stage in Token 2049 that we have done a deal with Athena, with Guy Young, and also with the Sui Foundation to issue stablecoins natively on Sui. So we're white labeling the Athena engine. We are issuing 2 new stablecoins, which is Sui USDE and USDI, which are Genius compliant. And what's great about the proposal is that 10% of the fees go to Athena, but 90% come back to Sui G and Sui to buy back tokens in the market. So if you're faced with in the future between using, let's call it Sui USDE, which has all of that return and the yield and the fees back into the Sui ecosystem, or USDC, where all of that revenue and that yield and those fees go out, what would you choose, right? And more importantly, for our shareholders and for Wall Street, right now you can only buy a few equities that give you stablecoin exposure. You can buy Circle, you can buy Robinhood, you can buy Coinbase, and now you can buy Sui G, because we are actually issuing stablecoins. We're building infrastructure. Going forward, we're going to be introducing to the market some very interesting and very innovative DeFi strategies where we are king-making protocols. We're using our balance sheet to drive liquidity, to drive lending. The business that we did the pipe into was a non-bank financial lender. So that's in our DNA as an operating team. We've got huge ambitions. And I think we are like the most innovative kind of data on the market right now. I think that, yes, we're a young network in Sui. We're not as mature as as Ethereum, but we're getting there. All the metrics are up and to the right. And as people become aware of what Sui G and Sui Foundation together are creating here, it's a very value accretive story for our shareholders and for the whole community.
It certainly is. Incredible summary of both Sui as well as Sui G. Stephen McIntosh, thank you so much. I'm glad we made this happen, and I would love to pick up the chat once we see the agentic economy come to fruition.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, guys. Banger stream. Glad Stephen was able to come on board and join us for a great segment to wrap up the show. Guys, we're going to put a ribbon on it. That was another incredible episode of Rollup TV. I think we've been live for about 3.5 hours. We talked about stablecoins. We talked about Hyperliquid strategies. We talked Sui G, and everything that's happening in the agentic economy, as well as everything happening in Bitcoin 5, Bitcoin staking, and ZK with our friend Natan, David, Steven, Garrett, and Steppen. Guys, thank you so much for joining today. And thank you to all of you watching at home. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next time on Rollup TV. Don't miss it. Same here, same time tomorrow. Peace.